The piano leaves at sunrise. The billionaire CEO said it without looking at her son. If nobody can reach Ethan before then, I'm selling it. Around us, therapists, consultants, and specialists stood in silence. They had spent 2 years trying to help her 9-year-old boy. None of them had succeeded. Then her family advisor glanced at me and laughed. He's a janitor. Victoria. Not a miracle worker. A few people smiled. They saw a black single dad in a faded work shirt. They didn't see the man who had once spent months helping his own daughter find her voice after her mother died. As movers prepared to remove the $300,000 piano, I noticed something nobody else had seen. A tiny blue star hidden beneath the bench. Hours later, that little sticker would lead me to a secret someone had tried to bury. An $800,000 offer that could change my daughter's life. And one word a grieving boy had been waiting 2 years to hear. Before I tell you what happened, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if stories about fathers, dignity, and second chances mean something to you, stay with me. I thought I was looking at a sticker. I was really looking at a countdown. My name is Marcus Reed. Most people don't remember my name. They remember the uniform, the work boots, the maintenance cart, the toolbox, the fact that I clean up problems after other people walk away from them, and honestly, that's fine. For most of my life, I learned that dignity doesn't come from being noticed. It comes from doing the job anyway. I was 44 years old when all of this happened. A black single dad raising a 10-year-old daughter in a small apartment outside Hartford. No mansion, no investment portfolio, no private staff, just me, Ava, and a life built one paycheck at a time. I worked as a maintenance supervisor at a children's hospital. The pay wasn't terrible. It wasn't great either, especially after the rent increase arrived that spring, especially after learning Ava had been accepted into a specialized learning program I couldn't fully afford. The scholarship covered most of it. Not all of it. The remaining costs sat folded inside a white envelope on our kitchen counter for nearly 3 weeks. Every time I looked at it, I felt the same knot in my stomach. Parents know that feeling. The moment you realize your child deserves something wonderful and you're not sure how you're going to provide it. One Tuesday evening, I was staring at that envelope when Ava walked into the kitchen. She immediately noticed. "Dad." I looked up. "Yeah. You've got your worried face again," I laughed. "My worried face. The one where you pretend you're reading, but you're actually calculating." That made me laugh harder, because she was right. Ava always noticed things. Tiny things. The same way her mother used to. She sat beside me and opened her backpack. A few seconds later, she pulled out a small notebook. Inside were sketches, drawings, ideas, dreams. One page showed a bridge she wanted to build someday. Another showed a science project. Another showed our apartment building with flowers she planned to plant outside. "You're planning a lot of things," she smiled. "Somebody has to." For a moment, I saw Danielle in her. The same stubborn optimism. The same refusal to quit. Then my eyes landed on the old birthday card Ava had made for her mother before she died. She still kept it tucked inside the notebook. 5 years later. Some things never stop mattering. Danielle's death changed both of us. But it changed Ava in a way that still haunted me. For almost 4 months after losing her mother, she barely spoke. Not because she couldn't, because grief had stolen the road between her thoughts and her voice. I spent those months learning a lesson no book could teach. Children communicate long before they speak. Sometimes through drawings, sometimes through objects, sometimes through the things they refuse to let go. That lesson stayed with me. It became part of me. which is why I noticed things other adults often ignored. A few days later, while replacing damaged lighting panels at the hospital, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I ignored those calls. This one left a voicemail. The message was brief, professional, urgent. The caller introduced herself as Lauren Brooks, executive assistant to Victoria Sterling, one of the wealthiest CEOs in Connecticut. At first, I assumed she had the wrong person. Then she said something strange. "We've been told you helped a child recover from prolonged selective silence after a family tragedy." I stopped what I was doing. Nobody outside my family knew much about Ava. The voice continued. "Ms. Sterling would like to speak with you regarding her son." I didn't know it then, but that phone call would take me from a hospital maintenance room to a billionaire's mansion. And before the next sunrise, a tiny blue star hidden beneath a piano would force me to choose between financial security for my daughter and a truth someone powerful wanted buried. The Sterling estate looked less like a home and more like a private museum. The front gates alone probably cost more than my truck. As I followed the winding driveway through acres of manicured grounds, I found myself wondering how many people lived in a place this large and still felt lonely. Because loneliness doesn't care about money. I've seen it in hospital rooms. I've seen it in apartment buildings. And before the night was over, I would see it inside one of the richest families in Connecticut. A security guard checked my identification twice before allowing me onto the property. When I finally parked, a man in a tailored navy suit was already waiting near the entrance. Late 50s. Perfect posture, expensive watch, the kind of face that looked permanently disappointed. He glanced at my truck, then my boots, then my maintenance uniform. The judgment was immediate. "You're Marcus Reed." "That's right." His expression tightened. "I'm Charles Whitman." The name meant nothing to me at the time. Later, it would mean a lot. "I advised the Sterling family." He said it like a title, almost a warning. Then he looked me up and down again. "I assumed Ms. Sterling was bringing in another specialist." I smiled politely. "I'm not a specialist." "No," he said. "I can see that." There it was. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the kind of quiet disrespect people use when they think they're too sophisticated to be rude. I had dealt with people like Charles my entire life. The trick wasn't fighting them. The trick was letting them underestimate you. They usually did most of the work themselves. A few moments later, Lauren Brooks arrived and escorted me inside. The mansion was breathtaking. Marble floors, cathedral ceilings, original artwork, walls lined with family photographs. Everything designed to impress. Yet the place felt strangely empty, as if someone had removed the heart and left the architecture behind. Eventually, we entered a large music room overlooking the back gardens. And immediately, I understood why. The center of the room wasn't the piano. It was the boy sitting beside it. Ethan Sterling. 9 years old. Thin. Quiet. Motionless. His eyes fixed somewhere beyond everyone else in the room. Nearby stood 2 therapists, a behavioral consultant, and a speech specialist, all watching, all waiting, all failing. Then I saw the piano. A black Steinway concert grand, beautiful, immaculate, and according to Lauren, scheduled to be removed at sunrise. The movers were already preparing inventory sheets. Something about that bothered me. A lot. The piano clearly mattered to Ethan. Even from across the room, I could see it. His gaze returned to it again and again. Not the entire instrument, one specific area. The bench, almost like he was guarding something. Before I could think more about it, another voice interrupted. "Mr. Reed." I turned. Victoria Sterling stood near the doorway. Confident, elegant, controlled. The kind of woman who could command a boardroom with a single sentence. But exhaustion sat behind her eyes. The kind only parents recognize. "Thank you for coming," I nodded. Of course. For a moment she studied me. I could tell she was trying to decide whether this had been a mistake. Then Charles stepped forward. "Victoria, with respect, we're wasting valuable time." The room immediately grew uncomfortable. He continued. "The piano leaves tomorrow morning. The specialists have already evaluated every reasonable option." Then he looked directly at me. "This man cleans hospital hallways. Not maintenance supervisor, not father, not Marcus. Just a janitor." A few people shifted awkwardly. Nobody challenged him. Victoria sighed. "Charles." But he wasn't finished. "We need real solutions." I looked at Ethan, then back at Charles. "Maybe." The answer seemed to surprise him. Then I added, "But sometimes real solutions start when people stop looking down on them." For a second, nobody spoke. Charles's jaw tightened. Victoria looked away. And Ethan. Ethan briefly lifted his eyes. Not toward Charles. Toward me. Then back toward the piano bench. Toward something only he seemed to understand. And when I followed his gaze, I noticed a tiny flash of blue beneath the bench. The same moment Charles abruptly stepped between me and the piano. I noticed something important about Charles Whitman. He wasn't watching Ethan. He wasn't watching Victoria. And he definitely wasn't watching the therapists. He was watching me. Every time I moved closer to the piano, his attention followed. Every time Ethan looked toward the bench, Charles seemed to become slightly more uncomfortable. Not scared, just irritated, like a man watching someone walk across a freshly mopped floor. That alone didn't prove anything. But it made me pay closer attention. "Mr. Reed." One of the therapists approached me. A polite woman named Dr. Kaplan. "What exactly are you looking for?" "The reason he's looking there." I nodded toward the piano bench. She followed my gaze. "He does that all the time." "How long?" "Almost 2 years." I looked at her, and nobody thought that might matter. The question wasn't meant to be rude, but judging by her expression, it landed that way. Before she could answer, Charles stepped forward. "We've spent thousands of hours studying Ethan." There was a sharp edge in his voice now. "I assure you, the piano has already been examined." Maybe, maybe not. But there was a difference between examining an object and understanding why a child cared about it. Children don't attach themselves to random places. Not usually. Especially grieving children. I slowly approached the piano. Nobody stopped me. Not yet. Ethan watched. His eyes followed every step. The closer I got to the bench, the more alert he became. Not anxious. Not frightened. Interested. That mattered. A lot. Because fear pushes children away. Meaning pulls them closer. I crouched beside the bench. The tiny blue star sat underneath like it had been waiting for someone to notice it. Small. Faded. Old. Definitely not new. I reached toward it. Immediately Charles spoke. "I don't see how vandalized furniture helps us." The comment drew a few uncomfortable glances. Victoria finally looked at him. Charles. What? His hands lifted defensively. We're hours away from removing the piano. There it was. The deadline. Sunrise. The movers were already scheduled. The truck was already booked. The piano's future had already been decided. All because everyone believed it was hurting Ethan. I studied the blue star. Something felt wrong. Not with the sticker itself, with its placement. It wasn't decorative. It wasn't centered. It wasn't visible from most angles. It had been placed where only someone sitting at the piano would see it, or someone searching for it. A marker, not an ornament. My fingers traced the underside of the bench. Wood, screws, fabric lining. Then something else. A slight gap. Tiny. Almost invisible. Years of maintenance work had trained my hands to notice imperfections before my eyes did. Machines leave clues. Buildings leave clues. Furniture does too. I pressed gently against the edge. Nothing happened. I tried again from a different angle. Still nothing. Charles folded his arms. The expression on his face practically screamed, "I told you so." Then Ethan surprised everyone. For the first time all day, he moved from his chair, only a few inches, but enough. Enough to lean slightly toward the bench. Enough to tighten his grip on the edge of the piano. Enough to tell me I was close. Very close. Victoria noticed too. Wait. The room became silent. Nobody wanted to interrupt now. Even Charles stopped talking. I pressed again. This time I felt a faint click beneath my fingertips. Small, mechanical, hidden, but definitely real. My pulse quickened, so did Ethan's attention. The therapists exchanged confused looks. Victoria took a step forward. What was that? I looked up. I think someone built something into the bench. Charles immediately shook his head. That's impossible. Maybe, but impossible things rarely make clicking sounds, especially when a little boy spends 2 years guarding them. I carefully slid my fingers beneath the panel, and that's when I felt the edge of a concealed compartment. The moment I touched it, Ethan sat up straighter than anyone had seen in months. And for the first time, I realized something else. The piano wasn't just important to him. The piano was protecting something. And Charles Whitman looked terrified that we were about to find out what it was. The hidden compartment was real, and the moment the panel shifted open, the entire room changed. Even Charles stopped talking. For a man who always seemed to have something to say, that was impressive. The concealed space wasn't large, maybe 12 inches wide, only a few inches deep, just enough to hide something important from people who weren't supposed to find it. I carefully opened it the rest of the way. Dust lined the interior. Not much, but enough to tell me the compartment had been sealed for a long time. Inside were only 3 items: a faded photograph, a folded sheet of music, and a short wooden pencil worn down almost to the eraser. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. For several seconds, the room simply stared. Then Ethan stood. Not fully, just enough to lean forward. The reaction was immediate. Every therapist noticed. Every specialist noticed. Victoria noticed most of all, because it was the strongest response Ethan had shown all day. And it wasn't directed toward a doctor, or a treatment, or a therapist. It was directed toward the contents of that hidden compartment. "Careful," Victoria whispered. I nodded. The photograph came first. A younger Ethan sat on the shoulders of a smiling man I immediately assumed was his father. Behind them stood the very same piano, only newer, brighter, alive. The picture wasn't remarkable. What mattered was Ethan's reaction. The moment he saw it, his eyes locked onto it. Not casually, intensely, like someone looking at a doorway. Then I unfolded the sheet music. Blue stars had been drawn throughout the pages. Not many, just enough to be intentional. Every few lines, every few sections. The same shade of blue as the sticker beneath the bench. The same symbol, the same handwriting. A pattern, a system, something designed. Not random. Definitely not random. Then I looked at the pencil. Oddly enough, that seemed to affect Ethan even more. His eyes never left it. Not the photograph. Not the music. The pencil. A tiny object everyone else would have ignored. Including me. If Ava hadn't taught me years ago that children attach meaning differently than adults. The room remained silent until Charles finally spoke. I don't understand what any of this proves. I looked up. His expression wasn't curiosity. It was frustration. The kind that appears when events stop following the script you expected. It proves this compartment mattered. To a child. Exactly. The answer irritated him. Good. Because for the first time all evening, somebody was paying attention to Ethan instead of talking about him. Victoria stepped closer. Marcus. Her voice was softer now. What do you think it means? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I examined the back of the sheet music. That's when I noticed something strange. A faint rectangular outline, lighter than the surrounding paper, as if another page had once rested there for years, then disappeared. A missing page. My stomach tightened. The hidden compartment suddenly felt far more important. I carefully turned the paper toward the light. There were pressure marks, indentations, the kind left when someone writes on a sheet placed above another. Not enough to read, but enough to know writing had once existed there. Writing that no longer remained. Someone removed something. The words escaped before I realized I'd spoken them. Victoria looked alarmed. What? There was another page. Charles immediately shook his head. That's speculation. Maybe. But his response came too fast. Much too fast. The kind of answer people give when they already know the question. I looked back toward Ethan. His eyes moved from the compartment to Charles, then back to the compartment. The movement lasted less than a second. Most people missed it. I didn't, and neither did Victoria. For the first time that night, I saw uncertainty enter her expression when she looked at her advisor. Then another thought struck me, a dangerous one. The movers were coming at sunrise. If the piano left, whatever secret remained hidden inside this room might leave with it. And suddenly the clock mattered more than ever, because somewhere connected to that missing page was the reason Ethan had guarded this piano for 2 years, and I had less than 12 hours to find it. By 10 o'clock that night, the mansion felt less like a home and more like a countdown clock. Every hallway, every conversation, every glance at the grandfather clock in the main foyer, everything reminded me of the same fact. The movers would arrive at sunrise, and if I was wrong, a piano worth $300,000 would leave the estate carrying the last secret Ethan seemed willing to protect. Victoria gave me access to the family archives. Charles hated that decision. He tried not to show it. Failed. Victoria, he said for at least the fourth time. We're allowing a maintenance worker to conduct a personal investigation into private family records. The emphasis on maintenance worker wasn't accidental. Neither was the look he gave me. Victoria surprised him. Then maybe we should ask why a maintenance worker is the first person who's gotten a response from my son in 2 years. Silence. Beautiful silence. Charles didn't have an answer, so he left. Or at least pretended to. I noticed him lingering outside the archive room several times throughout the evening. Watching. Waiting. Listening. That bothered me. Not because I thought he was dangerous, because he was invested. People rarely become that invested unless they have something to lose. Around midnight, I found myself sitting alone at a long wooden table surrounded by decades of sterling family documents. Photographs, letters, concert programs, school projects, music notebooks. The deeper I dug, the more one thing became clear. Daniel Sterling adored his son, not in the performative way wealthy families sometimes advertise affection. Not for appearances, not for photographs, for real. Every folder contained evidence of it. Handwritten notes, sketches, inside jokes, small rituals, the kind of things fathers create when they genuinely enjoy being with their children. Then I found something that made my pulse quicken. A notebook, blue cover, worn edges. Inside were piano lesson notes written by Daniel. Most pages were ordinary. Finger exercises, practice schedules, encouragement. But every few pages, one symbol appeared again, a blue star. The exact same blue star, the exact same shape, the exact same marker. I flipped through faster. Blue star, blue star, blue star, again and again, each time accompanied by a short, handwritten phrase, safe harbor, slow breath. Look for me. Then finally, anchor. The word stopped me cold. Anchor. The same word that seemed to be pressed into the missing page. The same word appearing throughout Daniel's notes. Not random. Never random. A system. A language. A code between father and son. I immediately called Victoria. 10 minutes later, she sat across from me, studying the notebook. Her hands trembled slightly. I've never seen this. You sure? She nodded. Daniel kept most of Ethan's music lessons private. A sad smile appeared. He said it helped Ethan focus if they had their own world. Their own world. That phrase stayed with me, because suddenly I wasn't looking at piano notes anymore. I was looking at breadcrumbs. A trail. One carefully designed for a child. Then another realization hit me. The missing page wasn't the beginning of the mystery. It was the end. Someone had removed the final piece. The most important piece. The one Daniel wanted Ethan to find when he needed it most. Just after 1 a.m, my phone vibrated. A text from Ava. Couldn't sleep. You okay? I smiled, then replied. Working on something important. A minute later, another message appeared. You always say people hide important things where they think nobody will look. I stared at the screen, then slowly looked back at the blue star notebook. And suddenly, another memory surfaced. The pencil. Not the photograph. Not the music. The pencil. Ethan cared about the pencil more than anything else in the compartment, because maybe it wasn't just a pencil. Maybe it was the thing used to write the missing page. Maybe the missing page wasn't hidden. Maybe someone copied it. Maybe someone moved it. And maybe the person who knew exactly where it went was the same man who kept trying to stop me from asking questions. Charles Whitman. Because for the first time all night, I wasn't wondering whether Charles knew something. I was wondering how much. At 3:30 in the morning, I found Charles Whitman in the music room, alone. The mansion was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. The movers were scheduled to arrive in less than 3 hours, and Charles was standing beside the piano, staring at it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he noticed me. His expression hardened immediately. "I suppose you're still searching for clues." I walked into the room. "I'm still searching for the truth." A faint smile crossed his face. Not a friendly one. "The truth." He shook his head. "Mr. Reed, sometimes people cling to grief because it feels meaningful." I glanced at Ethan's piano. "That's an interesting thing to say." Charles sighed. "You don't understand what's happening here." "Then explain it." For the first time all night, he looked tired. Genuinely tired. Not angry. Not arrogant. Just exhausted. "I spent 2 years helping Victoria survive after Daniel died." His voice lowered. "I watched this house become a shrine." His eyes moved toward the piano. Everything reminded Ethan of his father. Because his father mattered. Because his father was gone. The response came too quickly. Too defensively. Then something clicked. Charles hadn't hidden the note out of greed. He had hidden it because he thought he was helping. The realization changed everything. Not a villain. A man who believed he was doing the right thing. The most dangerous kind. "I found the notebook." His jaw tightened. "I assumed you would." The blue stars. Silence. The word anchor. More silence. Finally, Charles looked away. "That told me everything. You removed the note." It wasn't a question. He didn't deny it. Instead, he sat down slowly on the piano bench. "I archived it." The distinction mattered to him. Why? Because Ethan wouldn't move forward. The answer came immediately, like he'd rehearsed it for years. He kept returning to that compartment. His voice cracked slightly. He kept waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost, because his mistake came from a place many adults understand. He thought healing meant letting go. Children don't always heal that way. Sometimes they heal by remembering safely, not forgetting. A few minutes later, Victoria entered the room. Apparently, she hadn't been sleeping either. One look at Charles told her everything. "You removed it." The hurt in her voice hit harder than anger ever could. Charles stood. "I was trying to help. My son spent 2 years looking for something his father left him." The room fell silent. Nobody argued. Nobody interrupted. Because there wasn't much left to say. Then something unexpected happened. A sound. Small. Almost invisible. The soft movement of a chair. All 3 of us turned. Ethan stood near the doorway. Nobody knew how long he had been there. Watching. Listening. His eyes moved from Charles to Victoria to the piano. Then he walked toward the bench. Slowly. Carefully. The entire room froze. Ethan reached inside the hidden compartment. His fingers brushed the photograph, the notebook, the pencil. Then he looked at me. Not through me. At me. For the first time. I remembered the word, the blue stars, the notebook, Daniel's promise, the language built between father and son. I crouched slightly so I wouldn't tower over him. Then I spoke the word, softly. Anchor. The room held its breath. Ethan's fingers tightened around the old pencil. His shoulders relaxed. Not completely, just enough. Then something incredible happened. He pulled a sheet of paper from the piano bench, placed it on top, and began writing. The pencil moved slowly, painfully slowly. Each letter deliberate, each stroke careful. Victoria covered her mouth. Tears instantly filled her eyes. Because after 2 years of silence, Ethan was communicating. Not with a therapist, not with a specialist, with a pencil his father had left behind. When he finished, he pushed the paper toward his mother. One word sat in the center. Anchor. And for the first time since Daniel died, hope felt stronger than grief. But the word itself wasn't the biggest surprise. What Ethan did next would change everything. The word anchor sat on the page between Ethan and his mother. Simple. 7 letters. Yet it carried more weight than every expert report in that mansion combined. Victoria stared at the paper as if she were afraid it might disappear. Then Ethan did something nobody expected. He reached for her hand, not dramatically, not like a movie scene, just a small movement, a hesitant movement, the kind that means everything when it hasn't happened in years. Victoria broke down. The controlled CEO vanished. The billionaire vanished. The woman who managed boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions vanished. Only a mother remained. She dropped to her knees beside her son and held his hand carefully, as if she had been waiting 2 years for permission. Nobody interrupted. Not me, not Charles, not the therapists. Some moments belong to a family. This was one of them. Several minutes later, Victoria asked everyone to leave the room except me, even Charles. He didn't like that. Not one bit. But for once, he kept his opinion to himself. When the door closed, Victoria sat across from me at a small table near the piano. The paper with anchor remained between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she opened a drawer and removed a checkbook. Immediately, I knew where this was going. She wrote quietly, deliberately. When she finished, she slid the check across the table. $800,000. The number looked unreal. My chest tightened. Not because I wanted to be rich, because I instantly thought about Ava, the scholarship gap, the rent increase, college someday, every sacrifice, every bill, every night spent calculating expenses after she went to bed. For a brief moment, I imagined what that money could do. Then Victoria said something that changed everything. Take it. I looked up. You promised a reward. No. She shook her head. This is more than that. Something about her tone bothered me. What do you mean? Victoria hesitated. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked uncomfortable. Then she slid a second document across the table. A confidentiality agreement. An NDA. I stared at it. She immediately looked away. Victoria. My voice was calm. What is this? It's standard. No. I tapped the paper. This isn't standard. The room became very quiet. Finally, she exhaled. If the media finds out Ethan's personal history, I understood. At least part of it. The Sterling family lived under constant scrutiny. Headlines, investors, public attention. but something still felt wrong. I looked down again. The NDA wasn't just about privacy. It transferred ownership of everything discovered during the investigation. The note, the piano materials, the findings, everything. The story would disappear into a legal vault, buried. Again, just like Daniel's note, just like the truth. Victoria pushed the check slightly closer. Marcus, your daughter's future could be secure. There it was, the temptation. The painful part wasn't the money. The painful part was that she wasn't wrong. Ava deserved opportunities. Ava deserved security. Ava deserved everything I struggled to provide. For a moment, I thought about the envelope still sitting on my kitchen counter. Then I thought about Ethan, a child who had spent 2 years trying to protect a message from his father. A child adults kept silencing because they believed they knew better. I slowly pushed both documents back across the table. Victoria stared at me. You don't want the money? I didn't say that, because honestly, I did want it. Any father would. But wanting something and accepting it aren't the same thing. I pointed toward the piano. Your son doesn't need another adult making his story disappear. The words landed hard. Victoria lowered her eyes. No defense. No argument. Because deep down, she knew I was right. Outside, dawn was beginning to approach. The movers would arrive soon. The mystery was solved, but the consequences were only beginning. And before sunrise, one final truth would force everyone in that mansion to decide what kind of people they wanted to be. The sun was rising when the movers arrived. 3 men in company uniforms stepped through the front doors carrying equipment and inventory sheets. They had no idea they were walking into a completely different situation than the one they had been hired for. Neither did most of the household staff. Word travels quickly inside large homes. By breakfast, nearly everyone knew something important had happened in the music room. What nobody knew yet was how much. The piano remained exactly where it was. No straps, no moving blankets, no loading ramps. For the first time in months, nobody was talking about removing it. Instead, they were talking about preserving it. The difference mattered. A lot. When I entered the music room, Victoria was already there. So was Ethan, and so was Charles. He looked older than he had the night before. Not physically. Emotionally. Like a man carrying the weight of a mistake he could no longer defend. For several moments, nobody spoke. Then Charles surprised everyone, especially me. He walked toward Ethan, stopped a respectful distance away, and quietly said something I don't think he had practiced. I'm sorry. No excuses. No explanations. No speeches. Just 3 words. Simple, honest, necessary. Ethan looked at him. Not angrily. Not warmly. Just thoughtfully. Children often understand sincerity better than adults. Charles turned toward Victoria next. I thought helping him move on meant removing reminders. His voice sounded rough. I was wrong. Victoria nodded slowly. There were tears in her eyes again. But these were different tears. Not grief. Relief. The kind that arrives when people finally stop fighting reality. The note remained inside the hidden compartment. The photograph remained there too. The pencil, the sheet music, the blue stars. Everything. Not because they were valuable, because they belonged. That morning, Victoria gathered the therapists and specialists together. Something about the scene stayed with me. Not because she was wealthy, because she was humble enough to admit she had learned something. My son wasn't trapped by the memory of his father, she told them. He was trapped by the fear of losing him completely. Nobody argued. Nobody challenged her, because everyone in the room knew it was true. A little later, Ethan walked back to the piano, alone. No prompting, no instructions, no therapy exercise. Just a boy and a memory. The room fell silent again. He sat on the bench, placed Daniel's pencil beside him, then rested both hands on the keys. I don't know how many people were holding their breath. I know I was. Ethan looked toward the hidden compartment one last time. Toward the blue star. Toward the note. Toward everything his father had left behind. Then he pressed 3 keys. 3 simple notes. Nothing complicated. Nothing dramatic. Just 3 notes. Victoria immediately began crying, because she recognized them. The same 3 notes Daniel always played before saying the word anchor. A family ritual. A promise. A signal. The room understood what it meant, even if nobody said it aloud. I'm here. You're safe. You're not alone. For the first time in 2 years, the piano didn't sound like grief. It sounded like connection. A few minutes later, Victoria approached me privately. No check. No contracts. No NDA. Just gratitude. Real gratitude. She explained that the scholarship program Ava wanted to attend had recently partnered with one of her charitable foundations. Then she handed me a business card. Not a gift. Not charity. A contact. An introduction. An opportunity. The difference mattered. Because dignity matters. And she finally understood that. Before I left, Ethan did one final thing. He tore a small piece of paper from a notebook, wrote a single word, folded it once, then handed it to me. I didn't open it until I reached my truck. Inside, in careful handwriting, was one word, anchor, and underneath it, something else. Thank you. I still keep that note. Not because it came from a billionaire's son, not because it became part of some life-changing story, and certainly not because it was worth anything. I keep it because of what it taught me. A week after I left the Sterling estate, life returned to normal, at least on the surface. I went back to the hospital, back to maintenance requests, back to repairing things people only notice when they stop working. The same hallways, the same tools, the same routine. But something felt different. Maybe because every time I looked at the folded note in my wallet, I remembered that some of the most important things in life aren't broken. They're just unheard. One Friday evening, I came home to find Ava sitting at the kitchen table. Her notebook was open, colored pencils scattered everywhere. The old birthday card for Danielle rested beside her, exactly where it always seemed to be. Some people keep jewelry, some keep trophies. My daughter kept memories. How was school? I asked. She shrugged. Good. Then she looked up. What happened with the piano boy? I smiled. That had become her name for Ethan. The piano boy. I sat across from her and told her everything. Not the money, not the contracts, not the billionaire part, just the important parts. The blue star, the hidden compartment, the note, the word anchor. Ava listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her notebook and pulled out the birthday card she had made for Danielle years earlier. The paper was worn now. The corners bent. The crayon colors faded. But she handled it carefully, like something precious. You know why I still keep this? I nodded. Because you love your mom. She smiled. That's part of it. Then she opened the card. Tucked inside was something I had never noticed before. A tiny blue paper star. Hand-cut. Slightly crooked. Small enough to fit on a fingertip. I stared at it. Ava. She laughed. I made it when I was 6. I picked it up carefully. The paper was old, fragile, and suddenly I understood something. The blue star under Ethan's piano. The blue star in Daniel's notebook. The blue star hidden inside my daughter's card. Different families, different stories, same purpose. A reminder, a connection, a promise. Children understand that instinctively. Adults spend years relearning it. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail, not from Victoria, from the educational foundation she had mentioned. Ava had been accepted into the program. The remaining tuition had been covered through a merit grant. No special favors, no secret payments, no charity disguised as generosity. Just an opportunity earned fairly, the way it should be. When I told Ava, she threw her arms around me so fast she nearly knocked me out of my chair. And for a brief moment, I thought about Danielle. How much she would have loved that smile. That night, after Ava went to sleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The note Ethan gave me rested beside the birthday card. Anchor. Thank you. 2 simple words. I looked at the tiny blue paper star, then at the old card, then at the empty chair where Danielle used to sit. And for the first time in a long while, the memories didn't hurt quite as much, because grief isn't something you defeat. It's something you learn to carry, like an anchor, not the kind that drags you down, the kind that keeps you from drifting away from what matters most. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever kept a small object that meant more to you than anyone else could understand? Have you ever been underestimated because of your job, your background, or the way people saw you? And have you ever discovered that one small thing, a note, a photograph, a drawing, or even a single word, changed the way you looked at your life? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if stories about fathers, resilience, dignity, second chances, and the quiet strength hidden inside ordinary people means something to you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of the people you love and don't ignore the little things. Sometimes they're carrying the biggest truths of all.